Thank you, Premier. This certainly is Thank You Day. I want to thank every single Victorian who's been through so much these last 18 plus months. Again, to the healthcare workers, from primary care, community care and hospital care, who've worked so hard, who continue to work so hard to protect us all and to care for us all. And then to everyone who's really reached out to others through these really difficult months. I know that people have needed extra support, and there have been so many people who've volunteered their time and who've really had a focus on others. And really the thing that struck me through the last year and a half, maybe more than anything, and maybe in Victoria more than anywhere else, is the way that we've thought about all Victorians in the things that we've done. Of course, there's benefit for us in getting vaccinated, but there are so many conversations I've had where the focus has been on what we need to do for everyone in Victoria, what we need to do to care for everyone around us. People have done the right thing in following restrictions with that in mind and with the care and compassion for everyone in this state in mind, and that's been a really wonderful thing to watch. It has been a long time, and the lockdowns have been so difficult for so many. I think we understand why it was required. We had 20% full vaccination coverage when we went into this lockdown for the eligible population. We could not have carried on without restrictions in place, without many, many hundreds of people dying. And again, we thought about that risk and we thought about what it would mean not to follow those restrictions, and we've done a fantastic job to get to this point in time. So please, let's celebrate it. Let's enjoy this lovely day and many lovely days to come with acknowledgement that we do deserve it, that we should enjoy it, but also that there'll be people who do feel anxious, might be timid after such a long period of time. Don't feel obliged to respond to every invitation to be out and about. Do what you feel comfortable with. Recognise that it's not easy to have had such a long period of time in lockdown to then kind of emerge into the world, but enjoy the things that you do deserve, and please start to book in those things for yourself, including seeing family and friends that have been a long time coming. There is a long way to go. We need to punch through those thresholds, the 80% fully vaxxed threshold. We absolutely can and should punch through that 90% fully vaxxed threshold. We know that there are still challenges in countries that have very high vaccination rates, and we want those challenges to be as minimal as possible, and the way to do that is to have as fully vaxxed population as possible. We've got some terrific signs. The fact that there have been more than 90% now who've got their first dose amongst eligible populations from 12 years and above means that there's every expectation that we'll have more than 90% fully vaxxed for 12 and above. That'll mean 80% or thereabouts across the total population. That should mean that we lock in some of these freedoms, some of these wonderful choices that we can have going forwards. And it's the best insurance for us and for our healthcare system. But as we start to reopen, there will be more COVID in the community really than at any other point in time. Many of those people will have mild illness because they're fully vaccinated. Many of those settings will have fully vaccinated people, but recognising that children will also be in those places and some exempt individuals will be in those places, and that getting vaccinated doesn't mean that you're absolutely guaranteed not to get the virus. You can get mild illness and you can pass it on. So we have to bear in mind those other really important protections. Checking in, wearing a mask will be really important, and on days like today, opening every door and window in sight to let that fresh air through, that'll be a really important measure. Usually at this point I'd go through the geography of cases, but that'll be in the afternoon update and available on our website. It hasn't changed largely, other than to say that the southeast of Melbourne has really seen the biggest load and the biggest surge in cases most recently. But as we move towards that 80% fully vaxxed threshold, I do want our public messaging to squarely focus on the fact that we're going to look out for our priority and at-risk populations. We don't want to leave anyone behind. We will reach into you, but please reach back out to us by taking those opportunities to get vaccinated. We don't want any priority population left behind, and we do want to punch through that next milestone and go beyond. and we will continue to communicate all of those change settings and approaches as we go forward. In terms of geography though, I want to call out a couple of things. La Trobe is experiencing high case numbers, 70 new cases today, so big challenges there, but we've had days like that in the past in regional Victoria, and they pushed through with higher and higher vaccination rates and gotten on top of those numbers with the things that we know are the public health pillars: isolation, quarantine and the contact tracing work that's being done fantastically in our local public health unit there. There is additional support for La Trobe. There's a pop-up testing team at the Traralgon Basketball Stadium. Did another 203 tests yesterday on top of all of those at the static sites. And as first dose vaccination rates in the La Trobe Valley have closed in on the state average of 91% of people 16 and above, the second dose rate is also catching up. It's at 66%. In Wodonga, we're also keeping a close eye. There is a significant outbreak in Albury, 50 cases a day in recent days. A little bit lower in Wodonga with 11 new cases, but really it's one city and there is a risk there. So we'll also keep a focus on that. We want anyone with symptoms in the Albury-Wodonga area to come forward for testing. And then on vaccination, always a good news story. For a week now, we've been administering more vaccine doses than any other jurisdiction. So we're absolutely punching through that 70% threshold and onto 80% milestone. We are determined not to leave anyone behind in that regard. So we've been doing smaller, more focal, more localised pop-ups that are really focused on those postcodes that we know are underdone. So please look out for those and come forward. In Mildura, Star Health and the VATCHO there, the Victorian Aboriginal Controlled Health Organisation, partnered to deliver 2 fixed vaccination sites with assisted transport to the sites. More than 100 doses delivered through this model yesterday. And we've got 2 mobile in-home vans delivering vaccination right to people's doorsteps over coming days. There's a mini pop at Degani's Craigieburn, did 48 doses yesterday. Again, doesn't sound like a great deal, but many of those people hadn't received their first dose of vaccine. So finding and reaching into those individuals is really important for us. There are people who still haven't gotten to the point of getting vaccinated. They're not against getting vaccinated. So we want to make those available opportunities there for each and every person. We've got a new site at Bunjil Place near Fountain Gate, did 169 doses yesterday. It'll also be open to walk-ins through November. And my final message is really that vaccination is our key. We'll be opening up more and more in weeks ahead. And as people start to move around, there will be more virus than at any other point. So we need to make sure that that population who are under-vaccinated or unvaccinated move through, get their first vaccine, get their second vaccine. We've still got 20% of those over 50 who haven't been fully vaccinated. They've had their first dose but not fully vaccinated. Please make sure that if you're due for your second vaccine, you get vaccinated. And we do know, as the Premier said, 94% of people in ICU not fully vaccinated. So get in the queue to be vaccinated. Don't get in the queue to go to hospital or to be in ICU. It is so critical to protect yourself and those around you. Thank you.
Information in the daily update provided looked a bit different today. I think all the same information is there, but it's in a different order. Can you walk us through those changes and why they're made?
Look, I think it's appropriate that we focus on the levels of vaccination we're getting to for all the reasons that we've talked about today. So high vaccination coverage is literally representative of the protections of everyone across the state and of our health system, and it's the target we really need to focus on. And it might not seem like a lot, but getting to 90% means something. Getting to 95%, it's actually reducing by half the number of vulnerable people who might end up dying in ICU and hospitalised. It's a really significant thing to go above and beyond that 90% mark as well. So I think it's appropriate to focus on that vaccination rate that we're getting through and the coverage that we're heading towards. We are not in the same situation as New South Wales. They've reached it a little bit earlier. We are also on the top of our curve as we ease some restrictions. So, you know, our roadmap is appropriately adjusted to the epidemiology in Victoria. We've got school going back, but we've got 20,000 plus active cases. So we have to bear that in mind as we step carefully through everything. We have to be aware of the number of active cases that we've got, and the vaccination coverage is that other kind of counterpoint to that.
And with more venues open, there's the potential for more exposure sites as people move around. Are you anticipating over the next few weeks for there to be many more Victorians in isolation as close contacts?
Look, there's potential for it, but at the same time we're recognising that when we've got a vaccinated economy, we've got vaccinated requirements for those settings, we're not going to get the same kind of number of close contacts, and they won't be quarantining for as long a period, so that cumulative number of people who are close contacts won't have the same pressures at all.
What's the expectation on kids over 12 showing their, between 12 and 16, showing their double vaxxed kind of status when, say they go to the hairdresser with their parent or going to the zoo, that sort of thing?
Yeah, look, the same requirement for everyone else who's in an eligible age group to show their vaccination certificate. They are as vulnerable, if you like, to COVID infection as anyone else who's unvaccinated, and they've got similar protections being fully vaccinated. So it's an important thing to check.
So previously it was that only those over 16, because that's obviously within the 70% that we're counting at the moment, would have to show that proof. Is that now being extended down to anyone 12 and above? My
understanding is yes. I didn't sign the directions on the relevant mandatory vaccination threshold days, but that's my understanding.
You clarified some information on Twitter this week around the need for deep cleans, and that they shouldn't necessarily be deep cleans, they should be surface cleans now. I wondered if you could clarify that, and there has been a rebate for businesses to get those deep cleans. Is something like that still necessary?
So they're not going to look the same. We know from, again, international literature and a deeper understanding of what surface contamination can do, that it's really not as significant a risk as the shared air as being in the same, especially indoor space, and that the cleans that need to occur are really the high-touch surfaces, so the door handles, the railings, the things that lots of people will touch in those environments. They need to be cleaned down, but it's not a case of cleaning every single surface with a disinfectant in the same way. And it is a burden. It costs money, it uses a lot of chemicals, and it takes a lot of time and effort. So that those requirements have shifted.
Does that mean the need for a rebate for $10,000 isn't necessarily needed?
It shouldn't be the same requirement, no, going forward.
How long do you think we need a vaccinated economy for, and is there a level of vaccine coverage at which you will recommend we don't need that system anymore?
I don't know that it'll be a case of a specific vaccine coverage, but it's clear that the higher and higher we get, the more we'll see normal life return, and those individuals who are vaccinated, who get their booster, they'll have long-term protection. So, that'll be a long-term protection for us as a society. It's also clear that there are, trials underway, and the FDA in the US are looking at vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds. They will make the same applications to the TGA here. That'll make a difference to what we can do and how we see transmission change. So we'll keep an eye on that, and that'll make a big difference. But you can't make a call just on 12 and above vaccination coverage at this point in time. We don't know how transmission will go under that scenario. We know the higher we get, the more downward pressure there'll be on transmission. But there are ongoing challenges in countries with very high vaccination coverage, so we want to encourage that to the fullest extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supercar girl,
That's the answer. But it's been
That was all Jimmy, wasn't it? Yeah.
they might have the wrong